What's going on, guys? Welcome to Boosted Motorsports. So behind me, we've got this 426 Hemi with a 3-liter Whipple on it in a Dodge Dakota pickup truck. So if you guys are stopping by the first time on this channel, we've done a bunch of crazy stuff. We've got this truck here. It's 8-speed swapped as well. So it was originally going to be just a 6.4 liter 392 Scat Pack powered truck, but then we went all out on this thing. We fully built the engine here in-house from a bare block using MMX Modern Muscle components and got this all together. We also got a fully built Challenger Hellcat. We also built the engine in-house with that one. That one, as it sits right now before we turn up the boost, is making 1,000 horsepower to the wheel. Also have a Hellcat swapped Ram 1500 single cab. We got a bunch of other stuff that's not even in here because I got my RV stuffed in here. And then we've of course got the Dakota, which we are kind of infamous for, which has a complete 2019 Hellcat conversion stuffed into this tiny little truck with the full interior, red key, all that stuff. But you guys are probably here for this. So on the last video, we got a bunch of stuff. My buddy Dennis came over and we just pushed and got this thing to crank for the first time. And then on the last video, we got it to turn over, we built oil pressure, built fuel pressure, and then when we actually went to hit the key to start the thing, it just clicked. And we thought we had a bad ground. I checked all the grounds. I even moved some of the grounds around to different locations. We went from a spot on the head to the block, and it didn't seem to make a difference. And then for the weirdest reason, I had the exact same issue happen on my Challenger Hellcat when we fully built the engine. I went to go start it, and it just clicked on me. And I checked everything, made sure everything was good. And then I just gave up and I put another starter motor in it and it just fired right up. Exact same weird problem happened on this. So you guys watched it happen in real time on the last video. And then I had to leave you guys with the teaser on the last video of us starting this thing. So let's get straight into that clip now. Okay, so we got the other starter in there. Let's see if that does or doesn't make the difference. What are you thinking? Let's see. Oh, dude, that's it. Bad starter.
Fire up.
I hate when it revs up like that.
It runs.
It does run. There's a lot of startup oil.
A lot of startup.
Yeah. Woo. I just hate when it freaking revs like that.
Yeah, well,
We'll dial in the tune a little bit. All right, let's try it. Yeah! Let's go! Run!
oil pressure 82, 83.
All right. Heck yeah. Hold on a second. All right. Heck yeah. Dude, that runs mint.
I know how to use the Holly.
Get out of here. Dude, that's pretty good for first startup, no?
That's pretty good for first startup.
So it's gonna be a lot of just coatings and stuff that are gonna be kind of coming off of this thing, but yeah. Heck yeah.
Heck yeah.
She runs. It was a starter motor. Oh man, that's I was telling Dennis, 2 starter motors in a row. When I built Duke, when we fully built the engine on that and I went to start it, it did the same thing. Although it didn't crank like this one at first, but it was like, I put another starter motor in and it started, and literally the same stupid thing happened on this one. But what do you think? She runs pretty mint for...
That ran awesome. For a first start, that ran awesome.
Yeah, like no valve train clackety clacks on startup, no nothing.
You held the idle just nice.
Yeah. Heck yeah. It's got to burn off all of that assembly lube, but that's normal.
Perfect, man.
Heck yeah. All right, so there you go. We ended up firing it up, but we only ran it for 20 seconds or so. Nothing crazy. Because we still have to finish the cooling system on this and get everything plumbed in, and we just wanted to hear it start, make sure everything was good before we finalize a bunch of other stuff. We've still got a lot more plumbing to do, but I've got a bunch of stuff that just showed up for the hoses, so I'm going to try and get this all sorted out. That way we can get these hoses dressed in. So I've got these gates hose clamps, which are going to look really good, but they are a pain in the butt to find the correct sized ones. So that's what I've just been messing with so far here. This one is a lot bigger. So this one here, you'll see it says 2 1/4 to 2 1/2. And then this one here, we've got 1 3/4 to 2 inch. So we're gonna see which ones we can size up. I've also got this really nice dressing we're gonna put over the hoses, and then hopefully I might have to get some different heat shrink, but I was trying to find the appropriate heat shrink that we can actually slide over top of the ends of this and kind of make it all look really nice. So let me mess with that. I'll show you guys the results. Okay, and while we're in here getting all this hose stuff, put in a brand new 180 thermostat. So we'll get this in here, get this old crusty one out of here as well. Man, check out how cool these are, you guys. So that's my union there. Put on these Gates power grip clamps, and that looks so good. So now we've got the perfect hose right there, but we are not done yet. Wait till I dress this up. So I'm gonna put my sleeving all the way on, put my heat shrink at the ends, and this is gonna look really nice. All right, guys, I'm super happy with the way these are turning out. So this is my lower radiator hose that I made. So we got a union here. I decided on this one that I can actually use one of these Gates across both. I ended up doubling up on the power grip clamps right here. So, but I don't think I needed to put 2 here. I think I could have probably just used 1 because they're so wide that like it's pretty much the width of more than 2 regular like band clamps or just any hose clamp. If you look at the size of this thing, like look, it's the size of 2 regular clamps. So what I did was just spanned it across my union, since my union is a flat union, and that came out so clean. So I am definitely going to be tucking this idea under my hat for future builds, because this makes things so much nicer. So here's the result on this one. So we got heat shrink on the ends, braided all the way across, and then like I said, these are all custom hoses. So ended up putting the braid in the middle, a little bit of a bulge right where our union is, but like I said, I probably could have just put 1 here, but we doubled up on it so it's extra secure. On this side, I'm gonna put the power grip on one side on the radiator. That way, if, you know what I mean, if we ever have to service anything, we can just use the clamp on this side rather than having to, because these clamps, they are like a one-time use, just so you guys know, you have to cut them off, but they do look clean. So I'm gonna put it on the radiator side, and then what you use is a heat gun, and then it essentially shrinks down. So as this thing is running, it's only gonna be getting tighter and hold that grip on there. So we'll put that on there, and then that's gonna be good to there. On the bottom, I'm gonna go hose clamp to hose clamp on the block, do it that way. That way it's just easy, because trying to get the heat gun down in there is gonna be a nightmare, but yeah, hoses are made up. I'll go ahead, get them on, and then we can potentially start putting some fluid in here. All right, so we've got coolant in the supercharger, we've got coolant in our radiator, although we're going to have to, of course, bleed it, and I also have to get an overflow tank for this, but we can still start it and, you know, bleed the system, but we just don't have an overflow tank as of yet. So I'll get one of those on order. What I do want to do, though, is you'll notice this corner isn't, you know, that well sorted out. What I've got to do is kind of finalize some of the wiring. And what I'm actually going to do as well is I am going to run 4 additional wires through the firewall to the fuse box, because if you guys have ever done something like this, you always end up finalizing something and then something else comes up, and then you have to end up trying to string an additional wire. And the reason why I haven't put the brake booster and the brake assembly in there is because once I do that, it's going to be sitting right here, and then I can't get my hands in there at all to get through the firewall. So I'm going to run 4 additional wires. Not sure if I think I probably only need about 1 of them at the moment, because I need to run something from our AC to come down to our compressor and trigger it on. But I don't need that, you know, I don't need the AC working right now to continue going. But I do want to get the brakes in here, because once I get the brakes in here, because once I get the master in here with our master cylinder, because once I get the booster in here with the master cylinder, I can hook up our brake lines, and then I can bleed our brakes, and then I could potentially put this thing on the ground, drive it backwards, and then we could heat cycle it outside and actually let it run for a little bit longer. So that's kind of where my head's at right now. Also have to figure out an intake. I'm kind of thinking I might be able to just put like a 4-inch piece here and then a filter over here. We'll see what I come up with there. But yeah, let me string these. The other thing I have to do, it's not really that important at the moment, at least, but we got a reverse camera that has to go in. I was thinking about running it through the firewall there, but I think I might actually go through the grommet in the floor for the parking brake. I think that might be an easier route. That way it's kind of a little bit more visible and accessible. In case the cab ever has to come off, you only have to worry about it from about here to the taillights because there's no disconnect on that reverse camera. So that way you only have to pull the wire back to there, and then you could lift it up with the cab. So anyways, let me string those wires, get a few things done, and then we'll get on to more exciting stuff. Okay, so I spent a bunch of hours just getting a bunch of stuff sorted out. I ended up putting on the hood latch, I put on the cable, routed that. When they did the paint, I don't know if I mentioned this in the last video, but we're missing the striker, and I haven't found it or seen it anywhere yet, so I might have to hit a scrapyard for that. But other than that, I ended up pulling those wires through that I wanted to, so these are all just additional spares. Still gotta tidy up the bottom of the fuse box, but I can do that later. And I'm gonna clean up all these wires and stuff like that and get them all situated, but this is literally just in test phase right now. Got a bunch of stuff organized, ran through here. There's a lot of wiring on this thing, as you guys could probably imagine. I mean, between this big supercharger and the Holley EFI and everything else, you know, supercharger pumps, it's just a lot of wiring. But that's gonna sit nicely right there. It's gonna get hidden by the brake booster, but it's gonna go over top of the 4-bolt pattern there. So I think I'm pretty much ready to slide that brake booster into place. So I'm gonna go ahead, get that in there, and then once I get the brake booster in there, then we can probably throw the master on and kind of get things a little more dialed in. So let me do that, and I will catch up with you guys in a minute here. Okay, brand new brake booster is in there, and then let's put the brand new master cylinder with the reservoir in there. All right, next up here is our brake booster line. So that's our vacuum hose to the brake booster. Obviously it's really long. It's again Charger Challenger stuff. So I'm gonna trim this back to length, and we'll get that here on this port on the brake booster. That's starting to get completely buried by just how much stuff is in here. All right, so we had to move almost a foot of hose, but we ended up putting a new piece of heat shrink on the end of the braid, and now let me put that on there. Okay, next up, we're gonna put the vehicle up in the air. A couple things. I'm probably gonna pull off the diff cover just to see what we're kind of dealing with back there after it making a ride from Miami to Tampa with no oil or fluid in it. And then also, I've got down here this brake line assembly here. The one that's on it, the hard line, is actually like pancaked on the actual axle itself, because we ended up getting this 9 1/4 from a junkyard or wrecking yard, and I guess somehow in the process of it getting moved around, it ended up squishing the line. Like when we received it, the axle was in the back of the truck and it was like completely squished down to being closed off. So I'm gonna replace that, and then we can get some fluid in this thing and hopefully some brakes. Let's get to work. All right, so I'm down here just messing with brake lines and stuff. And then the other thing I was trying to do was, we're not going to be using it because we're going to have a GPS speed sensor, but the speed sensor pickup on the back of the diff was snapped off inside, and I am managing to just get this out because, like I said, this diff was just getting beaten, battered. So I sprayed it with some WD and managed to get it out of there. So I had to take it out in pieces, but managed to get that out of there. That is a lot of sludge, so I don't know what's gonna look like inside the diff. I also popped the cover, and I don't know how it's gonna look in there, but there's no oil, so we shall see. We shall see. All right, we might get a little bit lucky, you guys. It is dripping a tiny bit from the bottom, so it said there was no oil on it from the salvage yard, but let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and set the camera down, see what we got coming out of it. Okay. Got a tiny bit in it. It wasn't completely dry, which is good. Let me take the cover off. Hopefully it doesn't look disastrous in here. No chunks. So, I don't know. It's definitely not new, but could be worse. Alright, so it's not terrible. I can see here the stamping on the ring gear is a 355, so that's what we got in it at the moment. I'll have to do some thinking on what we should ultimately put in here, but the plan is to take this whole carrier out and put a Detroit True Track in it, and since we're going to be all in there and whatnot, we'll end up putting some bearings in it. The only weird thing is, I'll show you guys, there's a lot of like rust and stuff like thrown up off the ring gear. I don't know if you guys can see that like build up right there at the top of the case. It looks like down here. I mean, it's definitely not brand new, but I've seen worse. So just a lot of like rust from it sitting for who knows how long inside of here. But other than that, it's a diff. All right, so I've got another sensor we're gonna toss in here, put a brand new O-ring on it, and like I said, we're not really gonna be using this for our purposes since it's all standalone, but at least it's gonna keep a seal on the top so that we don't puke fluid out there. And then also went ahead, put our brake lines on, put brand new banjo bolts on that, so that should be good to go. And then like I said, we're going to be completely rebuilding this rear axle housing here, so all this stuff is going to be coming out regardless. But for now, I might just throw the cover on it, at least that way we can move this thing back and forth, because like I mentioned, the goal for today is to get this thing to move under its own power. So that's kind of where we're at. Also, I'm going to slide these bolts in. We didn't really finalize a lot of this stuff because I knew the axle was potentially going to be coming out, but I didn't really anticipate that the tow truck driver was going to be stupid enough to drag this behind a tow bar. I thought it was just taking a ride on a flatbed and coming back on a flatbed, but the tow truck driver had other plans for us. So anyways, that stuff's supposed to be there. Luckily this thing held together for that hell of a ride it went for. So let me button up some stuff. I did just tighten up our drive shaft a little bit. Again, this is all going to come apart, but I had it just kind of in place here, but tighten those bolts at least so we can move this thing around just a little bit more, and then we'll bring it down, get some brake fluid in it, and bleed these brakes. All right, so I went ahead and bled the brakes. You guys didn't miss anything, but I did use a pressure bleeding system. So essentially you put new fluid in here, pressurize the reservoir, and then it's a one-man bleeding operation. So started with the back furthermost corner, worked our way around. Now we've got brakes all bled, so we've got that. What I want to do one last thing is, if you guys recall, our Supercharger coolant pump is right here, but we haven't wired in the wiring for that. So this is the wiring that comes with the Whipple kit, but I don't want to add all of this extra nonsense to our system. What I'm probably going to do is use the plug and then wire it into the factory fuse box. I think it'll look a little bit cleaner rather than having to do all this and just have an extra lug coming off of our battery. So that's my game plan. So I'm going to get to that. I'm gonna wire this in, bring it to our factory fuse box, and then this will come on automatically with the vehicle running. All right, so got this in here. Again, still have to complete some of the wiring and dress things in. I had to open this back up because the way the factory relays work is the PCM was over there, and then it closes the circuit to ground. So it's already got a positive power source, and then the ECU or PCM would originally bring that circuit to ground, and that's how it would click things on. So what I'm having to do is run back into the harness, grab the wire, bring it back to our factory ground here, and then that way I can control it with a positive switch source. So what I did was repurpose one of the relay areas. This was for the O2 heater, so we obviously don't need that with this setup. So repurpose that. So this relay, and I'm gonna mark and label everything as well, is now for our Supercharger coolant pump. So it's got a dedicated circuit. It's all set. So now what should happen, I wanna see, this should probably bubble up if we, and I got my power on, if we just turn the ignition to run, hopefully we should hear the pump turn on. And this is how I routed this in. Put a little P-clamp here to hold the wire, and then it is grounded here to the chassis as well. So only had to run the one power wire up to here. So let's see if we hit the key, not to start it, but just to cycle it. Should come on with the fuel pump. I did see this bounce. All right, another day, another dentist. So Dennis stopped by, and what we ended up doing was, I don't know if I explained this, but I'm going to explain it again. So the relay was normally powered through another relay, which came on and it was triggered from the original computer. So what we ended up doing was we moved it over to one of the hot leads here. So we've got a 20 amp fused. Dennis said we should probably turn that down a little bit because the wiring for that pump from Whipple is very thin gauge. So yeah, it doesn't require too much amperage, so we might turn it down to like a 15 amp just so that our wire is protected. But anyways, now when we turn it on, we got some, is gluggage the correct term?
Luggage.
So
Luggage.
It works, and so you'll see that our reservoir is now empty. So hold on, actually, let's put some sauce in there. We can
get some juice.
Give the people what they want.
Give the people.
So if I put sauce in here,
we'll fill this up, and then when we hit the key, it's gonna eat all this as it starts circulating and filling everything. All right, sender.
It's go time.
There we go.
Squirter.
So it only comes on for like 10 seconds as the fuel pump primes, but once it's actually running, it'll be on continuous. Sure, I don't know, hit it another time, we'll see. I don't know how much it's gonna take.
It's gonna fill the reservoir.
All the bricks. Alright, well, we're gonna do it from the Holly. We'll go turn it on and then we can run that continuous. This thing can get wild in here. It's like a dishwasher. It's like foaming it when it's like frothing it whenever it hits a little bit of air pocket. Alright. Well, probably got enough to start it, yeah. Cool.
All right, so coolant is in. We've got it up in the air right now. What I did do is I just took off my cable ties here that were holding this thing in neutral so we could push it around. So still got to fasten and button up some of the wiring. Transmission right now is looped, but we'll end up running those lines up to the front afterwards. And then we ended up putting in the plug on this side for the O2 and took out that old O2 sensor we had there. So we're gonna put it back down, put some wheels on it, and might be able to move the Hellcat Ram out of the way and drive this thing out under its own power for the first time. All right, so wheels are on. It's back down on the ground. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking it's gotta go inside.
So
It's time.
plan is to start it. Hopefully we can, it's still on just a Wizard tune. We're actually waiting for a file to come back, and then we're hoping we've got it, me and Dennis, dialed in enough to be able to drive out there under its own power and heat cycle it, get everything up to temp, burp the coolant, all that good stuff. This is Dennis pretending to be tall. Look at this. Look at them short ass legs. Do a basketball jump with your and one.
There, it's disconnected.
And none.
Wanker.
Okay, so we got it running a little bit, and then we noticed a little oil drip. So it came underneath here. Of all weird things, the dipstick. I don't know if you guys will be able to see that, but the dipstick tube was leaking out of here, and we got a tiny little bit of oil dripping off here. So we're gonna pop the starter off, double check the O-ring. There was an O-ring when we installed it, but double check it. I don't know if we have to. We'll put some RTV on it, seal it up, and put it back in. All right, should be a fairly easy fix. O-ring's got a little nick in it for whatever reason, so we're gonna pop that off, put a little new O-ring on there. Should be back into business. All right, beat up O-ring out. We got a new one in from our nitrile O-ring kit. Back in business. All right, so we are gonna attempt to. Right now the idle's still surging, but me and Dennis are tired of huffing on fumes, so we're gonna see if we can potentially put it into gear, but it's probably gonna surge and stall. Like I said, we still gotta get the tuner in here to do everything, but we just wanna check fluids, let it run for a little bit, that kind of deal. So let's see what happens. So, a few things. One, we thought we had a bad fan, but it ended up being that we had a ground strap on the passenger side that we had to put on. And then our fan was spinning full speed, but what we found was this radiator. No buenos.
It's no buenos.
So, even though we don't have this sealed up, we shoved some rags here and tested it out.
we're actually able to have a piece of paper sucked and stuck to even the front AC core with the fan running, but this AC core gets way too hot. So part of the problem too, is me and Dennis were talking about it, is pretty much any radiator that you buy these days aftermarket is going to be made in, how does
China.
there you go, that's what I was gonna, China. So we are up against that. So I have a feeling, even though this size radiator I'm pretty confident would cool it, I think the core is just trash. So probably gonna end up having to return this, and then we're gonna have to either spend money on a really expensive radiator, or might try to see if I can get some sort of different name brand one that will actually cool it. Because right now, even sitting here without AC running, we're getting starting to break over 200 degrees, which we don't want to do. So anytime it went over 200, we just shut it off. But we got a 180 degree thermostat in there, and it still keeps creeping over 200. But what we are going to try to do right now is, we've got the idle a little bit more settled in. Still need to get a tuner behind the keyboard, but we're going to try and put it in a reverse. We tried to take it out and do that, but it's essentially, it was surging and then it just stalled. So right now we've got it to where it'll start, which I'll show you guys here. Check it out. Just got some bass. Let's try and put it in gear, see what happens. All right, guys, so it's the next day here, and we ended up driving it back into the shop. So that was a big accomplishment in that regard, because this thing has just been an ongoing project for a while now. Couple things though. I got to figure out what we want to do with the radiator. I was hoping, and in all intensive purposes, if we were able to get a factory Mopar radiator that has the plastic end tanks, I am like 99.9% sure that it would cool. But the problem we have is every single radiator that we're going to buy at this point is going to be made overseas. It is what it is. The quality is just not there. So there's a high probability that these cores that are in here are super cheap, and it might be blocked. It might not have the efficiency. Again, I keep referencing this. This radiator right here on the Hellcat is nearly identical. So plastic end tanks, almost the same core thickness, but we're running an issue. So I'm gonna have to address that. I've reached out to a couple companies now. I'm gonna see about maybe getting a different radiator set up, because right now I don't wanna let this thing get too hot. We're just nearing over 200 degrees when it's sitting here idling with the fan running. So I'm gonna have to do something with that. Also, we had the shop fan blowing at it, and still the core is just getting super hot and it can't seem to get rid of the heat. So we'll deal with that. But what I do wanna do is, for a while, I have wanted to give this monster a face. So one more thing, because I know somebody's probably going to mention it in the comments, I'm playing with the ride height on this. Probably going to have to raise the front up a bit, so I'm going to get some different springs for the front, get the front up. It was sitting half decent, but as we started adding more and more weight, supercharger, heat exchangers, fluids, all that stuff, the front's just been slowly sinking. So I'm going to have to rebalance it out, but we'll deal with that afterwards. What I do have here though is some cool stuff. Check this out. DAC pack for the license plate, and then we also have headlights. So we got these custom headlights made, the owner did, but they look cool from the outside, but I was really disappointed when I saw the back of them. So I want to see if they work first and foremost. Paid a pretty penny for these, but the workmanship on the back is just, I don't know how to say it, it's lackluster. There's holes that weren't filled. We can literally see straight through to the lens on the front. So these things are just going to turn into a fish tank. Like, this is how they were sealed up when we received them. Like, this is not going to seal. If you guys are with me on this, like, you'll know that, like, I can literally see straight into the headlights. So these things are going to condensate like crazy. I'm going to do my best to try to seal them up as best as possible. I'm kind of left with having to fix somebody else's mess, but it is what it is. But before I do any of that, I want to plug them in and see if they work. I also have a third brake light right here. So we're going to put the third brake light in, and then also we do have some tail lights. So I want to get those on here and just make sure everything works. So let's go ahead, plug this stuff in, make sure they work. They're not going to be finalized because I'm going to have to seal them up like I mentioned, but let's get them on here, see if they even function. Okay, so here's what we got with the headlights. Pretty much consistent with the wiring that we saw in the back. So I don't have the running lights connected to that side just because I don't want to finalize it just yet until I figure out what's going on. But low beam, we've got this one. That low beam works. This one, I just have the headlight bulb, not the running lights plugged in. You can see them back there. We got nothing here. When I turn on high beam, we don't get a high beam, which I would assume would be the inner, which is usually the case. And then the low beam turns on this one. So this, I don't know, this needs to be completely rewired. A little bit frustrated just because I feel like it doesn't matter what you get these days, like just workmanship is just terrible. So that one, we've got no bulb. This one looks like the low beam is turning on. They kind of have like little, you can see a little honeycomb deal in there, but yeah. And then the running light's gonna have that like ring around the perimeter. This one I've got it fully plugged in, that one I don't, so just disregard that one for a minute. But you're gonna have your amber there, the little halo deal there. So I don't know, I've got the plastic protectant still on it, but all right, well, let me leave it with me. I'm gonna have to figure out what's going on with all this wiring here. Obviously it's insufficient, so let me mess with it and see what's up. All right, so I just peeled back the tape or whatever you want to call it. It's a poor job here, and you can see here, this is the leads that go to the actual bulb inside, or the LED, whatever you want to call it. And then here is the wire for the shutter to open and close. So there's a shutter that essentially goes open and close for high beam, low beam. So it's wired into our shutter on this side, and then the bulb on this side. It should at least have our bulb wired up, and then the shutter is not wired to anything here also. So let me pull back this tape, see what's going on under here, but we're gonna have to rewire all this. All right, so the situation with this is as I expected. So needs to be completely rewired. So what I'm gonna do is make it so that the low beam stays on all the time, and then I'm also going to wire in the shutter for the low beam so that when you hit the high beam, the shutter for the low beam opens, low beam stays on, high beam is going to come on and engage the shutter also, so that'll be wide open and we'll have both bulbs working. And then, like I said, the shutter will open up and make the low beam even brighter. So all this wiring has to come out here. I got to put a diode in here and rewire this. So I'm going to try and clean this up, make the best out of this as possible. Leave it with me and I'll show you guys the result, but let me get to wiring. Thankfully there's not much to mess up on these ones because this is a factory bulb and then this is just an LED in the corner, but I gotta rewire all this junk. All right, so what I'm gonna try and do is disconnect all these wires here, and then I'm gonna bring them right out the center of both. So I'm gonna try my best to reroute them. I'm gonna take this little backing plate off. These looks like I can just feed them through the back. These ones here, so I'll have to extend them, feed them through, then they'll both come out these centers. That way we can hopefully get a good seal on it rather than trying to pinch wires in behind a gasket. I haven't fully decided how I want to connect everything here because we'll see how I want to do this. I kind of have to disconnect everything, maybe take the bracket off and seal up some of these holes that I'm a little bit worried about before I get a whole lot further, but I don't know. And there's screws protruding through. Yeah, I don't know, you guys. Let me mess with it. All right, so here's where I'm at. What I ended up doing was bringing all the wires out the center. So I had to extend the wires for the shutters. So fed some wires through, soldered, heat shrinks. Those are gonna go back on. And now the boots can hopefully seal. And then what I'm gonna do right now is I got some RTV, some black RTV. I'm gonna silicone these holes here. And then there's a couple of screws right there. And then last but not least, I'm gonna put RTV inside here around the wires and around the boot, just because there's some nicks in it and so that the boot fully seals off. So let me get that done. And I still gotta do this one over here. So I've got the headlights for the most part sealed up as much or as best as I can, and then ran the wires out the middle, put RTV all around it, and right now I'm just letting it cure and set up, and then I'll start connecting the wires. And I gotta put a diode, at least one diode, so we'll get to that in a second. But we do still have, while this stuff cures up on both of them, the third brake light, and then over here in this box I also have both rear taillights, so let's get those in. So here's the LED third brake light. I'll link it down below if you guys want this one. I already know the owner is going to want this. There's a little switch right there, and when you turn it on, it'll blink 5 times before saying solid red when you hit the brake. So I know that he's going to want that on, so I've got that little switch on. So 2 Phillips screws and this will be on. All right, guys. Well, a bunch of hours later, and I'm finally somewhat happy with the outcome. So I ended up putting RTV around everywhere, filled those holes that we could see right through. So everything's filled, redid the wiring, so now it functions the way I think it should. So low beam projector stays on at all times. When you hit the high beams, the inside bulb or halogen comes on and the shutter opens. And then the shutter opens as well on this one as well. So let's go ahead, put these on here, finally get to see what they look like. And I already put the taillights and other thing on as well. All right, new problem with these headlights. If you guys look right here, you'll notice that this is sticking out past this, and this is not fitting into the pocket of the truck. So I have to open this up more. So this, it's hitting like right here. So I can't put the headlight in flush. So I'm gonna have to open this up. Not the end of the world, but gonna have to open this opening up so that I can actually put the headlight in, because right now she don't fit. Okay, so I ended up popping off the front bumper, and then I had to cut some of the headlight pockets to allow for those projectors to actually fit. So I had to cut this out of the pocket, clean it all up. I have a picture of it. Let me put it on the screen here. So that was the chunk that I cut out, removed, and then that allowed me to actually get the projectors in here and the headlights in. They are aftermarket, so the fitment is, you know, it's gonna be what it is. It's a little bit hard to even find half decent fitting headlights that aren't factory for the Dakotas. Plus the body lines, you know, of these years, they weren't like the greatest, all the gaps and stuff, but it's pretty much as good as it's gonna get. So those are on there. Let me go ahead and put the bumper back on. We can actually close the hood and turn the lights on and kind of see what it looks like. And I do still want to figure out why the rear one, the one taillight, isn't working. It might be a ground strap that's off somewhere, so I'll see if I can figure that out before we wrap this up. Okay, headlights are in, headlights are on. What do you guys think? You like it? Don't like it? Is there too much going on? Are you guys a fan of the headlights? Do you like the more basic ones like these? Let me know down below. But what I'm gonna do right now is I wanna pull this forward so that I can get on the lift and then lift it up and see if maybe there's some sort of ground or something missing. Because I really am not sure why we're not getting a whole lot of taillight action out of this. We'll see in a second here. Okay, this is what happens when you let Dennis touch something. So the connector that goes right here to the back, if I touch it, if you look at the reflection on the ram, it is not clicked in all the way. This is, let's see here. If we squeeze this and actually click it all together, we should have our lights now. That's what happens when Dennis helps you. Okay, so now we should have full functioning lights. So that was just not seated all the way. Easy fix, I didn't even have to raise it up. I just figured, let me double check. See if Dennis did us dirty. Yep, and then our running lights work as well. So these little glow sticks. Let me actually plug in the brake sensor so it's not, right now the brake is permanently on just because the brake switch isn't hooked up. Let me hook that up, that way we can see it without the brake lights jammed on. So ended up fixing the brake switch. So brake switch is recalibrated. Now we've got the running lights on, so we don't have the brake light on. That's all working good. And then if we turn on our four ways, we should get some turn signal action with our running lights on. Hey, there we go. We've got all the action. And then if we look up front, let's go check it out. Turn signals. Okay. We are fully in business with lights. All right, guys, it's gonna be a wrap for this episode. I wanna get this up for you guys so you guys can see the latest progress on this. We got a ton more stuff on the way. So we just finished ordering all the stuff for the rear end. That's all on its way. I've got another radiator on its way also. So we've got those two things coming and we're gonna get that ready. But now this thing has a face. We've got some lights on it. Not that we need to see at night or anything at the moment, but at least just getting an idea of how this thing is gonna look. I also have to order some new front springs so we can try to dial in the front ride height as well. But if you guys need any help with your projects, doesn't matter what it is, whether you're doing a Hellcat swap, a Ram swap, putting something else in your Ram, Dakota 426 with a 3-liter Whipple, head over to shopboosted.com. We've got merch, we've got parts, we've got engine mounts for different swaps. We also have consultations. So if you have specific questions on your swap, your build, whatever it is you're doing, we've got general consultations, Hellcat swap consultations, HEMI consultations, we've got it all over there. So head over to shopboosted.com. We also have merch, we've got hats, we've got shirts, we've got a bunch of stuff over there as well on the website. Make sure you give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already so you're notified of when I post a new video on all this stuff. We'll see you guys on the next one.